Honourable members, it is now time for oral question period, and the Leader of Her Majesty's Loyal Opposition has the call.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Premier wants this House to pass legislation that would hide reports on his government's economic and fiscal performance last year. When I asked the Premier to explain this, he called me names, as usual, and then he tried to blame the Auditor General. He said the AG, quote, indicated their office is not capable of completing the review of the fiscal books at this point, end quote. But, Mr. Speaker, that's not true. The AG has since confirmed to us that they did not make this request to the Premier. Why did you mislead the House?
The Honourable Minister of Finance and President of the Treasury Board.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Due to COVID, the Office of the Auditor General, as was the case for many Alberta businesses, were required to adjust their normal course of operations. The AG office issued a number of news releases indicating that they were closing their Edmonton and Calgary offices and discontinuing on-site audits. Mr. Speaker, given the fact that there's 171 government reporting entities, and given the time restraints and the restraints due to COVID, it was unrealistic, Mr. Speaker, to expect public servants to deliver in that time frame.
Well, Leader of the Opposition.
Well, the Premier is not answering, and the Finance Minister seems to be doubling down, but the AG's office wrote, and I quote, the decision to extend the 2019-2020 year-end reporting period was a decision made by the government, not the Office of the Auditor General. Quote, we never stated any concerns about being able to complete our financial statement audit work by June 30th, end quote. Premier, we're now on the third reading of Bill 24, and the entire debate has been based on falsehoods. Will you acknowledge you misled the House, breached the privilege of these members, and apologize?
The Honourable Minister of Finance.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, my department reached out very early to the Auditor General on the decision to delay the issuance of the Government of Alberta annual report, and they too agreed that it was reasonable under the circumstances to delay and, in fact, express concerns with a very tight deadline. Again, Mr. Speaker, for the departments to prepare the annual reports, for the whole audit process to continue in a very tight timeline, given the COVID restrictions, Mr. Speaker, actually would have put public servants' health in jeopardy.
The Leader of the Opposition.
Well, it's lovely that the Finance Minister is now changing his story, but the problem is that members of this House were asked to debate a bill on the basis of a different story, a story told by the Premier, a previous story told by the Minister, a story that was full of things that were not true. They misled the House. They breached our privilege. They must withdraw the bill. They must apologize to the House. Premier, will you or will you not take responsibility?
Mr. Speaker, our first priority is for the health and safety of Albertans and the health and safety of our public service. Mr. Speaker, given the very tight timelines, of which Alberta has the tightest reporting timeline of any other province, a 3-month reporting deadline after our year end, given those tight timelines, and given our first priority of the health and public safety of our public sector workers, Mr. Speaker, Bill 24 and our assertion, our plan to delay the reporting requirement is very responsible.